it doesn't stand up.
Okay, we are live.
But don't they do it
We're
already?
not live, we are recording.
They're doing it in Green Bay.
I thought we did here too, but just virgin plastic.
All right, we're going to get started here. We're going to call to order. It is 5:02. We'll start with roll call. Frickin' damn it. Here.
Oh, no.
I just accidentally hit the wrong button. All right, false alarm, everybody.
I can let you in now.
Am I going to be double in? All right. Resuming with roll call. I am here. Ned? I am here. Brother Randy?
Also present.
Corey?
Present.
John?
Present.
Deb?
Here?
Julia?
Here.
And Mark?
Here.
All right, we are all here. Now we'll move on to approval of the agenda for today. Is there a motion?
So move.
There's a motion by Randy.
Second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Oh, wait, hold on a second. Alrighty.
So that's what it looks like.
That's what, right?
So it's just like point and click.
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
Sure, I've heard that before.
All right, we will move on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting on
So moved.
January 8th. There's a motion by Randy.
Second.
Second by John. All those in favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that passes. All right, we're going to move on to item D then, regular business. Discussion with possible action on the edited neighborhood letter.
Okay. So I am going, just give me one moment. I do have a couple of copies, but just give me one moment to pull it up so we can all look at it.
Oh, I have it up. Do I need it?
It's on, you can get it up.
I have it, I read it already. I'm like, I think I'm prepared.
Okay. So hopefully what I've done is, let me make this a tad bigger. So everyone can see. And, okay, good. Okay, ready?
What do you?
Really nice. Thank you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh yeah, what happened? You redid it?
I did,
Some
yes,
comments?
I redid
Yeah.
it, and I sent it, it was in your packet, and I have just a
Yep.
couple copies,
Yep.
and here is the
Yeah, I got it.
letter that is in your packet.
I only had one small edit.
Oh, yeah,
Suggested
sure.
edit.
Yes.
I don't think you need effectively improved water quality, it would just be improved water quality.
Oh, okay.
That's, otherwise I thought it read really nice too.
Okay. Now, the
Yeah,
one
we can
thing,
effectively take that out.
Great.
the one thing I didn't, we had talked about adding something about a changing climate, and so I think I need some verbiage around that. And then, you know, we'd like to hear from you, and so how do they get in touch? We would need to basically give them information about how they get in touch with us, and, anyway, those are the two things that I think we need to add. And then I will, we will have a new member starting in April, Corey Standal from Festival Foods, so.
Really cool.
Okay, so, something about changing climate, if that is still your desire to add that verbiage, and then let us discuss how people get in touch.
So besides Facebook, I mean, what other options do they have? They can call the city, they can get in contact with.
They can call the city, the city doesn't exist, they could call me, they could call,
The city doesn't exist?
no, they call the city, what is that?
Well.
Call a human being, right? They could call me or email me, they could call Will. Will is the neighborhood coordinator here at City Hall.
Can we get a city email?
Somebody has to answer that email.
Yeah.
I
Under
directed
with
to
our
some-
name on it, but.
So we do have like special events email.
Okay.
So I would suggest that when the resiliency coordinator is hired, that we have an email that could say something like, you know, sustainable Green Bay or something like that. I think that would be fine.
But then still one person would need to be in
One person would
charge
need to be in
and-
charge
yeah.
of that,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
I'm willing to be in charge of this. I don't have a Facebook account, so I can put my own email down.
Well, we do have a Facebook page that currently Ned is managing, and then Shelby Hurley, who is our webmaster, will be the administrator for it. So, I mean, I think Facebook now is good. I mean, they could actually Facebook the city. So,
I mean, I do like the idea of a generic email as well. I mean, we use it for
yeah.
two sides of my department. We have ones that's BC_port, and one's BC_resource_recovery. So, I mean, and they're monitored by, they're common mailboxes that a number of different people can actually look at and respond to. So,
Could we have it set up and it will be sent to you at first, but then just transferred to the resilience coordinator afterwards?
Sure.
Well, that's better than putting your actual email in there.
The horse is out of the barn. So let me just, I will put in here, what do you want to call it? Tell me what you wanted to say.
I
Sustainable
like
Green
what you
Bay?
said.
Sustainable Green Bay?
yeah.
Spell it right. GB or Green Bay, that's big. Which?
Green Bay.
Yeah. You think Green Bay?
Yeah, I don't know, that's just my gut, because you can see Green Bay. GB, would everyone know, I guess.
I like Green Bay.
But isn't it could it just be sustainable at?
It could be
City of
at,
Green Bay.
Yeah.
we are Green Bay,
Yeah.
wi.gov. That is our.
That's great.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sustainable Green Bay at Green Bay.
Is it effective?
No, just sustainable at Green Bay.
Yeah.
Stop. Okay.
That's
so,
perfect.
Email address. Okay, that's fine. I can get that.
I think a phone number of some sort would be nice too, just. But-
No. Who are they gonna call?
Well, I
Those
think-
Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
You get some elderly people who don't necessarily know how to use, or not
Right,
even
right.
elderly, but people who
So-
have access to
Do we have that
computers.
to give though? We don't have
Yeah.
a coordinator.
Right.
That's
Give Will
what you were
Peters.
saying, is it's either call cell or you,
Give Will Peters' number.
but he's.
I'll
not
ask
racist.
Will.
Maybe we just need to hold off till we do have that coordinator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask.
Are we getting anywhere near close to hiring then? Do we?
So I would say we would have someone, in the April timeframe
Oh,
I think we can hold
at
off.
best.
Oh, great.
Because last time you said summer, so that's a
Yeah.
better, that's a
That's
good.
cool.
At best.
Excellent, yes.
So it's not-
Well,
That's Saturday, April, right?
and I haven't
April is
talked to Will about this. There is a person, Noel, I think is the person now who's in charge of Green Bay neighborhoods. So, or GB. Yeah, leader, actually. I think it's Noel. I have to ask. I think it's good to get this out sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah, we
want?
can always send out another.
We could.
Yeah, an update.
We could. This could just be an introduction.
You want to cut these from a plane?
Are we gonna put Facebook then too? Or is that gonna be just on what, like website and Facebook?
I was gonna say, put the website, that's our link, that's our place, right? And then put the Facebook,
Yeah.
What is the name of the Facebook group?
Green Bay
Sustainability.
Sustainability Commission.
When I tried to search it after the last meeting, I was having
It took
trouble.
a
and
while
there's
for
two
it-
spaces in
It
it.
took a
Green
while
Bay
for it to be
Sustainability Commission?
searchable.
But there's I don't know if that made an impact, that there's two spaces.
In the type, oh, no.
I don't know. Yeah.
It wasn't
Okay.
showing up.
What- If you pull it up on yours, like mine pulls up as the admin of it, so it's not as easy, like there's so much actual extra stuff.
It's hard to get your
So you
own-
could probably look at the address quicker than, it's gonna be at Green Bay Sustainability, like that's the name of it on Facebook.
Still
but,
in it.
um,
Yeah.
Is it,
It does too.
that with commission or just sustainability?
It's Green Bay Sustainability Commission.
Okay, all right, I'll leave that. And then what about a statement regarding a changing climate?
I mean, you say promote equitable solutions to climate impacts.
Mhm.
I think that kind of covers it.
The list. Well, what if it was like, what if you made some kind of comment, like by working with residents, why don't you put something in there, like, in recognition of I don't know, challenges facing us with the changing climate, blah, 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 we are committed to,
Community-based approach.
yeah. Like just, but the changing climate statement isn't at the bottom there, it's like, it's part of the by working with residents kind of piece.
We aim to,
Or not, it's just like.
Just begin it with that?
Yeah,
With-
begin it with something about like, in
To-
recognition, I don't know, I'm not
Yeah.
saying this is the language, but in recognition of the challenges our community faces
To address?
to address a changing climate, yeah.
and other environmental.
We are committed to being, you know, maybe, I don't know.
What do you need to address that? What's your address?
Oh, man, I read it right there.
Like that?
I think it's more about people, so it's not like to address the changing climate, but it's like that we are committed to, you know, helping the community become more resilient and sustainable to address. These are just
Right.
me brainstorming, so it's not like an actual sentence. Group editing process as well.
In addressing a changing climate?
Yeah, in addressing. Resilient in addressing?
As we?
I don't think I proposed the right sentence, so if you can, like,
Right, to help
it's
the
the
community
ideas
become
is
more
my point.
resilient.
I will,
To address?
I will fix this.
So is this just a general overall view that you're trying to start with here?
Well,
Is it,
I was just suggesting where to put the
The changing climate.
statement.
Because the last time we talked
To
about this,
actually-
you wanted to add a statement about a changing climate. That's why I put it in there.
And I also agree with that. So, somewhere, not at the bottom.
So let's do this.
Yeah, that could be like that.
There we go.
Sure.
Let me, and, okay, so let's do this. Let us determine a timeline as to when you'd like this to be presented to Green Bay neighborhoods for individual neighborhood associations to include it in their neighborhood newsletters. When?
Well, the leadership doesn't meet again for 2 months. It met this month, doing every other month, so that makes it.
But the neighbor association's newsletters, they do theirs without, you know, it isn't about the neighbor, that meeting necessarily.
You don't want to start it there by presenting it to
We
all the
could.
presidents?
We could do that.
I think it'd be a better way of getting buy-in across the board.
Okay.
So you
So-
say they meet and they met in February?
Every
or
other
January?
month.
They met in February, so they
Even
won't meet
months.
again till,
April.
And if we're waiting till April, then.
it's the
maybe-
first Thursday in April.
So unless they're during earthquake?
Yeah.
The coordinator might be on the way to being hired by then,
They'll have a phone number.
maybe.
Find out whatever their phone number is gonna be.
Celestine is just thinking, not mine.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't, yeah.
Okay, and then the goal of putting this in the newsletters is what?
Didn't we put that in here?
I'm-
To
I'm
begin a
asking-
conversation
No, this
and
is-
convey
These are my
information.
notes, so.
So it says the goal of this letter is to begin a conversation and convey information. So I guess it's to inform people that we exist as a
Mhm.
commission probably,
Okay.
and to invite them to participate as part of the work that we do.
Can we What about translation? Is that something we've thought about too?
Funny, you should mention that, we just had a conversation about that internally.
In how many languages?
Even just 2 or 3. The city does not employ a translator. So, like, the police department has translation, obviously, courts have translation. But the city does not employ translators, and so we were just having that conversation about how we do that. And I don't know the capacity of individual neighborhood associations to utilize their own residents to do translation. So for instance, I was watching a documentary about participatory budgeting in New York. And, you know, this particular neighborhood in the Bronx, there were people who spoke Cantonese, people who spoke Spanish, and they were participating in the budgeting along with the neighborhood people speaking the language. We don't have that. So that is a barrier. It's on our radar screen, but I don't really have a definitive answer as to how we get that done without paying for it.
Okay, are there, is this something we could look into by April, maybe? Like maybe, I don't know if there's other organizations and/or how much it would cost
Yeah,
if
you
we had to
pay
do it.
for it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Do we know
Like
how much?
A student volunteer, like a Spanish major at college?
We went
That's
through this with all
tougher.
of our brochures not that long ago. We translated them all to them all in Spanish, and we ended up hiring
You need a
professional
professional.
translators.
Yes, yeah.
Because,
Translation is a skill.
yeah.
It's not
well,
just about
and it's
speaking
also
language.
what's the version? Because I actually talked to a friend of mine who works for the county who used to be Kerr Vang. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Kerr, okay, Kerr has done a lot of work with communities and everything else in this area. And I said, well, can you translate this? And he said, not really, but I'll review what you get back.
Yeah.
So he reviewed it, and he had some changes, and I went back to the company, and they said, well, no, there's different versions of Mountain, for
Yeah.
example. And this is kind of the common ground for everybody, and, you know, anywhere, and same, even with Spanish, there.
Absolutely, there are many
How
different
much does it
Spanishes.
cost for
It was-
something like
It
this?
was, for 2 full brochures for us, it was like $400. But that was back and forth, and they provided the publisher files and everything else at the end of the day for us. But that was,
Oh, that's like graphic design too?
no, that was just translation of the text.
Yeah.
But I provided them with the publisher files because then they could incorporate the
Oh.
translation into the middle of the graphics that we'd already designed.
Is that?
Excuse me. When we get the resiliency coordinator, will we have funding?
Will this commission have a budget with which to work? Is that it?
Yeah, when we get the coordinator?
It wasn't in the budget.
The
It does-
coordinator, so the
Necessary.
funding for the coordinator does not fund the activity of this commission.
Right, yeah. I just wondered. That's part of it.
At all.
So
Yeah,
where would we
I
get
did not write the grant
Any,
Yeah.
for that. I did write the grant for a little bit extra to fund the code audit, but that would not be funding the activities of this commission. So the question is, where would one get funding for the activities of the commission? Through, no, not a bake sale. Through fundraising, through grant writing.
Isn't a bake sale fundraising, so.
Yeah.
What do you mean by fundraising then, if that's not?
Like
It also
asking
depends
people
on
for
what-
bigger checks, not,
what-
you know.
Okay.
That's what I mean, bake sale, because I just, then you get into. like-
Maybe it's a festival foods bake sale.
Well, that's true.
It
Broad barn.
just translating a letter is, for example, or is pretty straightforward, but I mean, what are we talking about when we're talking about translating? The minutes, the agendas, I'm just asking, what's our limit in terms of what we're looking at translation?
Oh, I
Yeah,
think
that.
it's more like
So-
public education at this
It's
point.
that.
Gen-
Yeah,
like,
that's
not-
like
yeah.
something that just needs, should be done.
Yeah, I wish
rather
we
than-
would have something more here at the city. We're just not there yet for everything else that you just described.
Is that something that's gonna happen at the city level, more than just?
The translation?
Yeah.
I couldn't say.
It doesn't really happen at the county level either, so.
Does any-
was there talk of a diversity coordinator?
Yeah.
Yes, but that is not, that that position is an HR position, and what that person will be doing is really doing more employee recruitment, retention, employee
Oh, I see.
education, reaching out to diverse communities, but not necessarily doing something like translation services or something that are very specific. So, but a recognized need, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I definitely think that the need would exist far beyond the reaches of our commission.
Right. And do keep in mind, you know, funding the activities of the commission, you know, having some sort of, like I said, either through fundraising or through grant writing, especially your ability to do your own outreach.
Who would be the applicant? Would the city be the applicant?
Yes, for something like that, yes, absolutely, because you are part of the city. You're not your own entity unless you decide to start your own 501c3.
Well, you know, we're doing outreach, maybe what we should do is reach out to the Hmong Center and Casa Alba and provide them these materials to them, and they can make any translations they want to make. If we can establish relationship with Casa Alba and the Hmong Center, we just provide them with what we have, and
There's good and bad. I mean, yeah, the problem comes in terms of, when you pay a professional translator, they don't bring anything else into what they're translating. And when we're working with a community group that's doing translating for you, they may change the tone or the content of, and you may not know it. That's why we ended up hiring somebody else, because we couldn't get, for the messaging, it's pretty specific about certain things we want to get out there, and nuance can be a big deal.
right.
And that can be an issue. I don't know if it is. I don't know how well it works.
I think thinking beyond just the scope of this letter, that would be a great idea for, outreach goals to reach out to both of those organizations. Perhaps it's not a translated letter, but there could be other, other direct communication or collaboration on things. I think that would be good.
So, for this letter, your wishes are to, I'll make these changes. Our next meeting, of course, is the second Wednesday in March. I'll bring it back then, since obviously I need to make a couple of changes. Lengthy process, but we want to avoid a walking quorum, so that's the issue. Unless you just tell me to go ahead and do this, which I don't need to do without your final say-so. So.
You just walk it.
I think just bring it back in March, because we're not even gonna send it out till April anyway.
Right.
April, May. Yeah, I don't think it hurts to bring it back here.
March it right back in.
March it back.
Okay.
Sounds like madness to me.
So there's, do we need a motion?
What exactly is the motion? To bring it back to refer to staff and bring back in March?
Yeah.
Yes.
So motion by Ned,
Second?
second by Randy.
Hold on.
Everybody think about how you're gonna vote on this. Weigh the pros, the cons. Abstention is always an option.
You have to justify an abstention.
Wait, does the app work?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Wait, who made that?
Ned and Randy. We want to bring in witnesses.
Good. Closed session for this one.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? All right, that passes. Cool, good work, team.
Now. Mark, just pull this up.
Yeah, I gotta see which one I sent you. I have like 15 of them. How much time you guys want to go?
Oh, it's got.
I'll give you 5 minutes.
You know how to do it from here.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Is this correct?
No, not for that,
Okay.
no, that's just for TV.
How much time do we want to throw away?
Yeah, but this is really.
It's not a waste of time.
No, and we can always, continue a discussion as we go through it.
Wait, did you make this presentation for us, or are you recycling?
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
It's a disease.
Randy's spreading
Once you
it.
start, you can never stop, you recycle everything.
It's the Skinella virus.
Yeah.
So this is
Hashtag skin
and there, by the way, this has 50 slides in it, and usually it's like 1 minute a slide. We're not going to take that much time,
Thank
so
you.
we're going to try to skip through this. This is a presentation I do to the Lifelong Learning Program at UWGB.
Which is a 2-hour presentation.
And it's a 2-hour presentation. And I have never finished it because of questions.
Oh, okay.
So I've never gotten through the last part of this presentation with them. No.
So you should start at the end.
Well, it takes, you can do whatever you want to. So basically, what I usually do is go through background in the department, to talk about solid waste management, and all the aspects of solid waste and recycling that are out there. And I'll still follow that through. Just in case you don't know what we are, we do run a couple of facilities, and now South Landfill. Our South Landfill actually is opening in 2022. We are going to be putting garbage in there, and probably, maybe by the end of 21, for sure 2022, because the Outagamie County landfill is going to close.
Wow.
2 closed, how many are open right now?
In Brown County, none.
So why is that a wow?
So where are we going with our land, what are we doing with
We're just
it?
filling them up?
We are, well, I talked to, that's a little farther down the line, but so we can skip through that. Brown County is part of the Tri-County Solid Waste Management Services Agreement, so we share landfill space. It started in 2001, and at that time, Winnebago County's landfill was basically the one that was, ended up being what they call the receiving landfill of the 3 counties. At that time, we all 3 had landfills, we all 3 had recycling recycling facilities, and it made sense to consolidate as much of that as possible. So we, in 2009, we built a joint recycling facility, and we stopped using the other landfills that were either going to be open in Outagamie and Winnebago, or Outagamie and Brown, and started using Winnebago's exclusively. That got filled up in 2011, closed in 2012. Outagamie County opened up their landfill in around 2011. There's always an overlap. And that's the one on Highway 41 and 441, right by this side of the highway. It's like now 100 feet high. And they've got 2 more cells in there. It's filling up faster than anticipated because the economy is booming, so garbage goes up. I mean, that's what the point of this one is. These numbers I just got last week, and that's why I updated them on here, but we generate as a nation, in 2015, we're not going down, we're going up in terms of garbage generated because it's a healthy economy, and there's lots of garbage generated, and it's more people. So, 5 million more tons in 2 years, 5 million more tons of trash are generated on an annual basis, and almost 140 million of that goes into landfills. So we're not doing a great job of other stuff. And that's just into landfills. I'm not even looking at compost or incineration or waste energy or other ways of getting rid of garbage. That's just putting it into a hole in the ground.
So we use 1 landfill at a time with the 3 counties?
At this point, we use 1 landfill at a
Okay.
time. So when Outagamie is filled, we're actually starting to dig the south landfill March. March we'll start actually working. We hired a contractor. They're going to start digging the hole.
Where do they
in
take it all?
Tom
Fill.
Holland. Pardon me?
Where do they take it all? The
Take
fill? or-
Fill, actually, they just set it to the side because you have to cover a landfill every day. Engineered landfills have to be covered every day. Boy, you guys ask too many questions, we get ahead of it.
Yeah. How high can you go with a landfill?
We're not even
Can
gonna
we
get to
make a mountain?
recycling.
Well, you do, it's whatever DNR specifies as the height, given the plan of operation. Usually it's about 100 feet, 75 to 100 feet.
Wow.
Could we go higher, engineering-wise?
Engineering, sure, but you have to look at the footprint, and then you have to look at the slope stability of the landfill, and the fact that landfills always, tend to compress over time
Yeah.
because of breakdown of organic material inside of them, and then there's always gas release. But, so they tend to sink and get smaller as you go along. So if a landfill is planned for 15 years and 20 million tons of material in there, it'll end up holding 35 million tons, and it'll last 20 years because things compress and there's more airspace in there that gets used up. They're really engineered a lot. I mean, and you think about it in our county, so this is pretty current numbers, 2018. We had 195,000 tons of garbage just from, and this doesn't count the stuff that Waste Management and Advanced Disposal take to their landfills. This is just stuff that's taken to Brown County, the Tri-County landfills. So 195,000 tons of garbage went into our landfill, in the Tri-County landfill from Brown County, that was brought there from municipalities. There's another 100,000 tons or so that's brought to the landfill. See, 160,000 tons a year on average, 270,000 tons total, because industry takes another 100,000 or so tons to landfills on an annual basis as well from this area. So there's even more than that generated here, in Brown County alone, we're talking about. So recycling is actually just a tiny little, is like 10%, 10 to 15% of the.
And is it mostly plastic that's being put in there, or?
In
landfills?
No. Concrete, wood, lots of wood waste, lots of bulky material. Mattresses.
Wood can't be recycled?
We can talk about that a little later on
Okay.
too. Yeah. But I can skip that stuff. Wood waste can be recycled, but there's no market for it. The biggest issue we have right now is the fact that there is shale oil being collected in Canada and the United States that has, that also means that there's natural gas being collected at the same time from those same shale oil fields. And the natural gas prices drop so much that nothing else can compete against it. So we're getting rid of coal, we're getting rid of wood, a generation of heat from wood waste, from tires, from shingles, from garbage. None of it competes against natural gas. And so nobody can make the case economically for actually using a lot of these other materials. Wood waste also can go for animal bedding, but that's limited. I mean, you have to have clean wood waste to go to animal bedding. So a lot of farmers, I mean, they chip their own stuff and they use it for animal bedding, but they don't want to take just anything. I mean, anything that's pressure treated or contaminated, you can't use that for that purpose. So there's limits on it, on what you can do. Landfills also do use some of this stuff as a cover. It's called alternative daily cover. Every day when you finish putting garbage into a landfill, you have to cover it with something to both to keep the garbage in and also to help keep some of the methane from just escaping. And then landfill's actually done, they put a geomembrane on top of it, clay liner, and then a soil layer, everything else on top of that to hold everything in and keep it from going out into the atmosphere. So there's markets for stuff. We could actually extend the life of most landfills by several years if we were recycling mattresses. And there isn't actually an industry to recycle mattresses, but mattresses are so this is one of those conundrums you have with the waste industry. We would love to take mattresses out of the garbage stream and recycle them. There's actually a company in La Crosse that is Seven Rivers is very successful at doing that. Because they're big, they're bulky, they're lightweight, and the metal in them, the springs in mattresses, cause all sorts of problems in landfills because they tend to poke up through the ground, they tend to wrap around machinery, pop tires, all sorts of, and they don't compress. You can't compress a mattress. It's always basically going to take up the same amount of space as when it was put in the landfill. It just doesn't break down. But you can recycle them, you can get them out of there. It's just that it's not, we charge by the ton. So to make recycling mattresses worthwhile, we'd have to get about $15 a mattress to recycle it. That's our cost to recycle a mattress. Well, it's right now, disposal is like $40 a ton. You can get a lot of mattresses for $40 if you're going by the ton instead of, so unless there's state legislation that pushes that, it's not going to happen.
I'm sorry. You can get a lot of mattresses dumped for
a ton. You're right. So a ton of mattresses, a mattress weighs, let's say 100 pounds. So you can, that's 2,000 pounds to a ton. So you're talking 200, 20, my mind's not working right now, 20 mattresses for the tipping fee is $40. So for us to be able to get.
$2 a mattress versus 15.
Yeah, sorry.
A heavy mattress if it's 100 pounds.
Yeah, well, they're lightweight.
Something
Mattresses are
light.
lightweight, they're very bulky, and they, the way it works when we dispose of garbage, just doesn't work unless there's some legislation or some program that's consistent that prevents stuff from being put in the landfill. So, you know, we can talk about the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, which I sure hope stay around, because they're the reason we recycle and have engineered landfills. The BOW, Tri-County, so this is what we operate under, and we're in the process of renegotiating the agreement this year, right now. So that we're all three counties. They call it the BOW. I've never gotten used to calling it the BOW. In fact, our logo for the recycling side we came up with says Tri-County Recycling on it, because nobody knows what the BOW is. It makes sense when you know that it's Brown, Outagamie, Winnebago, but it doesn't quite roll off the tongue. So the question is, we know where you go.
We're out of that.
So Wisconsin actually has, written into legislation, into state statutes, is a waste disposal hierarchy. And that says this is, the top is the most preferable way of dealing with waste. So reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, energy recovery, land disposal, and burning without energy recovery. Right now, my department does, well, we were doing energy recovery up until last year. We don't do that anymore because we are actually burning methane.
Is that when you're burning the gases that come off of the?
You have to
or
have
the,
enough.
like, wood chipping that you're talking about?
Well, all landfills give off methane.
Mhm.
So you can, in modern landfills have a collection system of pumps and wells, and so it all is consolidated into a building someplace. And then if you have enough methane, you can actually burn it and generate electricity. And that's what we were doing on Scrays Hill with the old landfill on Scrays Hill. But that closed last year. June, we shut it off because it was, it cost us $80,000 a month to run the engines with maintenance, and we were generating $7,000 a month in revenue. It didn't make sense, so it's an old landfill, and it gets dry, and then it doesn't generate methane anymore.
Will that be part of the new landfill?
New landfill, yes, absolutely. All landfills collect methane. Dane County has a great landfill. They actually generate enough methane that they collect it, consolidate it, and they're running all their landfill equipment, everything else off of the methane that they've collected off the system. Our plan for the South landfill is actually to clean it up and put it into the natural gas pipeline that goes down Highway 50 or near Highway 57 and sell it back that way, because there's some energy credits that you get for that as well. So right now, we actually do a lot of it. The methane is burned at both East and West landfills. So the West landfill is on Mason Street. It's a transfer station on West Mason Street up past NWTC, and the East landfill is on Scrays Hill. Both of them have methane collection systems, and all we do is, we call it flaring it off. It's just basically collected and burned.
And what does that produce? What's the waste of burnt methane?
Carbon dioxide and water, I think. I'm not enough of a chemist to know for sure. I keep on looking at Julia, but that's just because you're across the table from me, Julia, so I'm not looking at you. But you're probably more of a chemist than I am by a long shot. So we do a lot of that. My messaging has always been trying to focus on reducing and reusing stuff, but, I'm a hypocrite because I have two non-reusable, non-recyclable phones that one county, one personal. You can't repair them. You can't, they're not reusable per se because their technology goes so fast. So it's hard to keep up sometimes with what's out there. But we do try to talk a lot about the reduce and reuse, and people always think recycling is number one on the list, but it's actually number 3. So we're trying to get more focus on the other two parts of it. And then land disposal, the majority of waste in this state, because land is so cheap. In Wisconsin, land is cheap. And guess what, folks? We live in like the cheapest area for waste disposal in the Midwest. Because of the Tri-County agreement, our tipping fees are about 1/3 of what they would be in most of the rest of the Midwest. So it's really cheap to throw away garbage in northeast Wisconsin, which is not a great thing. It'd be better if it was a lot more expensive.
So how are those prices set?
They're based on an audit. Because we're publicly run, we have an audit every year. The audit goes back, takes a look at the costs of operation of the facilities we have, as well as when we open a landfill, before we can open a landfill, we have to have an environmental repair fund and a closure fund in place. So the tipping fees also include a variety of funds that pay for closure, environmental repair, the cost of acquisition of a future landfill if necessary, as it goes on. As a public entity, so we have 6 or 7 funds that we maintain. They amount to between $28 and $30 million in those funds. It'll probably cost us, I don't remember what the cost is to run it. It's going to cost us $6 million to dig the hole to start the landfill next year, and then $8 million the year after that to actually build the facilities and everything else in there. And it probably costs 10 to 15 million a year to run one. But revenue is, at $40 a ton, we're getting more revenue than the actual cost. We have to put money into a fund to pay for a future landfill. If Southeast Wisconsin tipping fees are about $100 to $120 a ton, and they're $40 a year. And East Coast, West Coast, it's even higher than that.
So the systems in place make it very easy to waste a hell of a lot.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's not about you buying a phone, it's about...
No, but it's the whole,
It's the
whole
grand scheme.
process of things that are out there that start, I don't want to say it's disheartening, but sometimes it's disheartening. That's why at least I'm on the recycling, side of things. So normally, why recycle? And one thing I did take out of these are I have some really great videos, 30-second videos, especially because I talk to kids a lot. And there's a really good one that's called Tag. It's a group of 20-something-year-olds picnicking, and all of a sudden they look up, there's a guy. One of the guys throws his recycling into the garbage, and somebody else says, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." And then, "Hey, who's that guy? Those guys over there." They come out of the woods and they dart him. They give an ear tag that says ignorant or something like that, and say, and then they roll him over, and at the end it says he should have recycled.
So it's like Lord of the Flies meets recycling.
Oh yeah, there's all. So now, this is what comes down to in Wisconsin. We don't have a law that says you have to recycle. We have a law.
On your last slide, it said there was.
There's no, it's the law that you have to Okay, so here's the deal. There's not a law that says you have to recycle. There's a law that says that if you collect these things, you have to have a recycling program.
Oh.
So it is the law, but in a roundabout way. Our law doesn't say, the statutes don't actually say you have to recycle these things.
As a person?
As community.
Oh, okay.
It's aimed at communities and businesses. And it says that if you collect those things, these things are not allowed in landfill. So if you're a community that's picking up garbage and stuff, you can't pick up, your garbage cannot contain paper, plastic, metal, aluminum, glass containers. So since you can't collect them, you have to do something with them, and you have to have an effective recycling program, and that's what the statutes actually say. And that every community has to have an ordinance that says what's accepted and how they're going to collect things. So we actually have a landfill ban. We don't have a recycling law.
Oh, okay.
That's how Wisconsin works. And Wisconsin is only one of less than a dozen states in the U.S. that actually has any type of statewide legislation. So there's lots of other places that have worse things. But we do ban a bunch of other stuff as well, and those have led to really good recycling programs. Car batteries, which are right up top, the lead acid batteries are if we could do that, they're an example of a program called Extended Producer Responsibility, where the producers, the manufacturers of the batteries agree to take them back, and there's a deposit you pay on the batteries, so that 95% of all car batteries produced are recycled. Nothing else comes close. Paper is like 60% of all paper is recycled. And it's really easy to recycle paper. John, if you have any ideas, and can throw, I know you and I talk a lot, and you know a lot of what I'm talking about, so, yeah, there's other things. Consumer electronics were banned in 2010, and that it had a huge impact on both what we do and also what's coming out of landfills. We can see it in our leachate, the liquid that's generated in the landfill. You can tell what kind of contamination is in a landfill, whether there are hot spots, things like that, because of the leachate pumps and the wells that are in there. So you can tell if there's really nasty stuff in there or not. We work with New Water all the time on treating our leachate.
If you got something really
How much
nasty,
do
you
you-
gotta go in and get it, or?
We have to make an effort to segregate anything that, so when you put in stuff, when you actually put, for modern landfills now, we're GPSing anything special that goes into a landfill.
Oh, special.
Any special waste, and there are wastes we just can't take. If we can't take them, they go to advanced disposals landfill in Chilton. That's where all the PCBs went, that's where that's the hazardous waste landfill in this area, so there's lots of stuff that goes down there.
How much leachate is produced a day?
I don't honestly know, I've never been asked that question. I'm not the landfill person.
Enough that you have to
Enough that we have
monitor it and send it to New
AAA
Water.
sanitation on site a couple times a week, pumping out our holding tanks and taking it to New Water. And the new landfill is actually gonna have they're gonna be running it from the town of Holland to a lift station in De Pere to pump it to New Water. We had to make some arrangements with that. It's enough that if we had wanted to ship it to Wrightstown's wastewater treatment plant, we would have had to pay for an upgrade for the wastewater treatment plant. They couldn't handle the volume or the strength of the effluent. So, and you all know we're single stream recycling, right? So everything, and we're single stream recycling not because the county was looking at doing that, because it's actually, truthfully, in the recycling world, it's better to be like dual stream where the consumers are separating stuff. But De Pere and Ashwaubenon wanted to go to automated collections and negotiated with the county in 2008 to do single stream recycling. They actually were picking up stuff, single stream trucks, before we actually had a facility that could process it. So, they pushed that, but it was based on the community's request for it. I'm gonna go through these fast unless you have questions. Paper.
Have you seen a jump since single stream?
About 5 to 6%.
That's it, huh?
Yep. We keep on working on it every day. Yeah.
Does it cost more to separate it then, or?
Yes.
Why did De Pere and
It's,
why did
it's,
they want?
easier.
Just because it's easier for
Easier
the
on them.
residents?
well, yeah, it's a lot easier. So the collection process is much easier with single stream than it was with dual stream, because single stream is automated collection. You got a truck that's got a robot arm that picks up one container and dumps it, and so you've only got one person operating it. So that's part of it. Part of it is also you don't have, pretty much every one of the garbage truck drivers I know who was working before we went to single stream has some type of injury. Yep. They've either got, wrist, elbow, shoulder. People die in garbage trucks. It's fifth most dangerous industry in the country. We've already had, I don't know, this year's bad. We've already had
What were they?
a couple dozen. Is that, John?
I've seen those come through on my
Yeah.
different feeds, but
Yeah.
it's-
People die. People do stupid things in trucks, garbage trucks sometimes. And a couple of years ago, a guy in Howard Swamico area was decided to climb into the back of his truck with the lift gate open, the back of the garbage truck
Yeah.
open, to check on something because it wasn't working properly, and it closed on him. We had Green Bay, they picked up a recycling dumpster last.
Well, that was homeless person, yeah.
But it's part of the same,
Right.
they got crushed.
Right.
and if
I had
you're
a
not-
kitty make it through, I had a kitten, like a day-old kitten make it through the system. I found it on our tip floor, I could hear it crying, and went out and looked, and
Systems that aren't automated, you run the risk of people literally hitting you. I mean, in that business, you're exposed on the street. You're at risk.
falling off of trucks because you got one guy riding on the back.
Yeah.
Slippery
I always wanted to
conditions,
do that.
getting run over, things like that, so, yeah. So paper, we take most stuff, tissue paper, we don't take certain types of paper that are really small fiber paper because they don't they just
Christmas
don't
wrap, right?
Christmas wrap, because they mix in all sorts of other stuff, you know, like plastics and metals, and the fibers are really short now, most Christmas wrapping paper, so it's just not recyclable anymore. And then most of our paper goes to either Green Bay Packaging, Georgia Pacific, Fox River Fiber, or whatever the name of the mill is in Menasha that used to be called Essity, and then it was SCA, and then it was something else. I don't know, they've changed ownerships like 3 times. And Georgia Pacific takes most of our regular mixed paper stuff, and they said, well, pizza boxes are okay. Part of it is they're pushing, there's a big initiative by the food service industry, so the McDonald's and Starbucks of the world, to try to make themselves seem more sustainable. So they want to recycle 100% of their stuff, so they have been working with the paper industries, especially the big ones, to get them to take more contaminated paper, more paper that has grease on it or food in it or something else. And we've been approached because our facility is one of the biggest publicly owned and operated facilities in North America, in the US. It's the second biggest one in the state. So we have a big impact, and we're in the Paper Valley area too, so they want us to adopt these.
So we can do that now? I've been composting it. Oh, okay.
No,
I should keep
we
composting.
don't want it. They want us to take it, but we don't want it. And I've looked at the research, and there's nothing there that says we should do it, other than it's better to find a way to compost it.
Makes me feel better about all the pizza I ordered.
Yeah, there you go. You can take it to a food waste program,
Yeah,
or to
compost it.
a recycling program, so both of them take it.
Both the compost.
Metals are pretty straightforward. There are some things we just don't take because of issues with contamination or people just not listening to it. You know, we used to take paint cans, but we don't. We had a garbage truck in Green Bay 2 summers ago where he picked up a load of recycling that had like 6 cans of paint in it and dumped it into the truck. Paint all came out, spread throughout the truck, and he just drove it right to landfill because then it's garbage. That's why we don't say we take empty paint cans. If you dry them out, if they're empty. Yeah, we don't take aluminum foil either because we're only selling, there's not enough of it, and it's a different type of foil.
You'll take aerosol cans?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep, it's an aluminum that. But aluminum foil and pie pans, it's a different metal alloy than aluminum cans are. And they have to be able to grind them up and melt them together, the metals together, to recycle it. So pie pans and aluminum foil are much lower melting point, and they have other metals in them that don't mix. And the competition for aluminum markets is so bad that we get our bales rejected periodically for really, really small things. We had a guy going through and tagging all of our aluminum bales after he checked them and left these ribbons on them. They got sent to the buyer, who sent them back and said, you can't have those ribbons, that's too much contamination. It's very competitive right now. China hasn't helped us. Glass is pretty straightforward. You know, it's basically food and beverage jars with the tops on. Then we get into this one, which is the most fun part of this. Is, you know, in all honesty, this is the only reason we have recycling programs the way they are, is because of plastics. We wouldn't really need them for the most part. We wouldn't need the kind of curbside recycling we have if we didn't have plastics. Because there's nothing else you can do with them if you don't collect them and put them back. Metal is really easy to recycle. Glass stays locally anyway if possible. Paper is going locally. There's also paper is organic. You can do those sorts of things with it. Plastic, it doesn't break down. It's got 100 different varieties of plastic, and you know it's everywhere. So you got to do things. The biggest issue with plastics are this stuff right there. This is plastic bags wrapped in film. Next week I'll be doing on one of the morning shows talking about tanglers. Plastic bags and wrappers and film are basically contamination in the recycling stream. They end up either getting mixed in with paper because of how things get sorted, or they end up wrapping around some of the machinery. So they're on a system basis. It costs us well over $100,000 to $150,000 a year to deal with just the plastic bags that come through our system. Clearly, we've lost value there, and we can't sell them. We can't, when you take them back to a grocery store, they can sell them back, or they can give them to a company that will recycle them, and that actually has a value, but we can't get rid of the stuff we have. Nobody wants it because it's so beat up and so dirty and stretched out that what I tell a lot of people when I talk to them is if you put your plastic bag in your recycling bin, it'll end up, 100% of those will end up in the garbage. If you want to recycle it, don't put it in your bin because it won't get recycled, because we can't recycle them through, the way the system works, we can't recycle them. And the other problem with plastic is this. So, that little symbol was put in place, was developed by the American Chemistry Council in the 90s, I think it was the 90s, as a way of identifying resin codes, the type of plastic that was used to make a container. And coincidentally, they used a chasing arrow symbol at the time, which implies that it's recyclable, and it's not. Just number 3 there is polyvinyl chloride, and you can't recycle. John's better at looking at these kinds of markets than I am with the research you do. And is there a market for PVC?
There isn't.
No. And then number 7
we gotta make one.
7 is anything that's not 1 through 6.
Right.
So how do you do anything with it? So
1 through 6 isn't recyclable?
7 is not recyclable
So
because
7.
it's anything that's not 1 through 6. Basically, we have good markets, consistent markets for number 1 and number 2 bottles. Because even then, this is what kills us, because the PET, number 1, plastics, is also the same thing that's used to make, it's used to make water bottles and soda bottles, but it's also used to make clamshells, like, strawberry containers and berry containers. Okay, they're also number 1. But they're made differently, different temperature process to make those 2 containers. So when to recycle it, you have to grind this stuff up, melt it, and make it into a new container. They melt at different temperatures now. They can't be recycled together. And you can't separate them adequately in a system. You just can't. For the volume of material that's going through these systems, you can't actually identify what's a container and what's.
Do you say that somewhere that you don't take strawberry containers?
Clamshells.
We say that we take bottles, tubs, and containers. And we kind of make it vague because we actually did have a market for 4s and 5s for quite a while.
What about mushroom containers?
Plastic.
that
Rule of
the same
thumb,
as
if
a-
it's dark brown or black, it's not recyclable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's not gonna.
Blue?
Anything
Oh,
dark color
oh, okay.
is just not gonna, there's just no home for it.
But that's not the same as the strawberry clamshell?
Which are clear, no.
Yes,
They're-
okay.
They still, odds are they'll still end up in garbage, but they're a really small percentage of what we have, that we recycle, so that's the only catch.
Going along with that, the bakery containers, didn't the page before say that you recycle the bakery? So aren't those clamshells?
Produce, bakery, and deli containers, and
Like,
yeah.
you've got a clamshell right there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, part of it is just changing markets. So, one of the issues I have to deal with, there's lots of issues I have to deal with. I have issues, that's all I'm saying. Oh, yeah.
Understandable.
Is that the markets drive what we can recycle, and what else? So.
You can't just stop and say all of a sudden we're not
Thank you.
recycling this.
Yes, it takes us about 5 years to get a message out. It takes about 5 years before people learn that there's what they can do. So, bottles, plastic water bottles, soda bottles, you can leave the caps on plastic bottles. Okay, we started that messaging 4 years ago. And I still regularly hear people say, I didn't know that. You didn't know that?
No, I still take my caps off.
Leave them on, they won't get recycled if they're off.
What?
They won't get recycled if they're off.
Because they-
The caps
So-
won't get
They'll fall through the
recycled if they're
equipment.
up. The bottles.
So
are-
let's-
I
Oh, the
think I
caps,
heard-
oh, okay, all right. yeah,
Translate.
okay.
But aren't the caps like worth more because they're better?
No, they're polypropylene typically, so they're worth less.
They put a cap on that.
The most valuable thing we recycle are milk jugs. More valuable than aluminum right now, which is crazy. So this is just, I'm going to try to get through some of these really fast. These are.
Let's try.
This is changes in labeling that's occurring at a lot of the companies,
Oh.
Unilever and Procter & Gamble and others. So they're going to this type of labeling on a lot of packaging because it's a
Sort of drop
lot
off, yeah,
it's a
clearer.
lot clearer, it's been worked out in the industry how it works. It doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what to do with it, but it's a lot clearer than what we're
Right.
doing right now. So if you can find these out there right now, the problem is getting them on the whole range of products that are out there. Because, I mean, things like this, you know, how do you put a symbol like that on one of these? Well, that may or may not happen, I don't know.
And with consumer packaging, they're made up of multiple things all at once. I mean, there's
Yeah.
film in there, there's paper in there, there's plastic.
Mhm.
There's little regard to recyclability when they're designing these things.
Right.
So can I just ask on I mean, all this is really depressing and everything, and I appreciate it. but On a system level, what needs to happen?
On a system, oh my.
Thinking systemically,
Do you have-
how do you jump percentages, like changing to single stream jump 6% of recycling? What do countries who
Well, something
actually
that starts at the
succeed in
beginning.
this?
Well, it seems
What
like
do-
manufacturing.
excuse me, you're-
I'm sorry, pardon me, sorry.
This
My
is-
pardon.
My question though, related to that.
What do countries who are successful doing this do that we're not doing?
But what
They
percentage is
do-
not being, you said it jumped 6%, but what is the estimate that's not being recycled? That could be put in the
That-
recycling stream?
The estimate of what could be recycled is not yet. Well, so our recycling percentage, it runs around, well, EPA says it's like 60% of material that could be recycled is recycled, but they're covering a lot of industry. It's more like 35%, so a third of what could be recycled is probably being recycled, especially
And that's,
residentially.
and that's,
domestically.
and that's out of the 20% of things that are actually recyclable, because like
There's a lot of stuff.
80% of our waste goes to landfill, right? You said that.
Well, you know, concrete and, I mean, think about how much is generated when you take down a building, how much waste is generated. We've gotten better in terms of making buildings, or recycling buildings. So now when they take them down, there's usually a grinder on site someplace that's grinding up the concrete to make it, you know, to reuse it. They're not digging a quarry someplace to supply the gravel that they may need to build the next structure. They're actually using what was there and recycling it. So there's some changes that are out there that are definitely happening. You asked what are the most successful areas, places doing? They're pushing what's called extended producer responsibility. So they're pushing it back on the manufacturing because a huge chunk of our waste stream is packaging. And most packaging is not, I don't know if I can say most, a big chunk of packaging is not recyclable.
And isn't packaging like just exponentially going up, like the amount?
Huge, yes.
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 Much of it is marketing to sell the product, to differentiate it. And-
Right.
But
Like
he's right,
buying
if
vegetables
you
is
make the
like
manufacturer
totally.
responsible for the collection of what they're generating, there's an incentive to reduce the amount of what you're producing out there. But it's not in the hands right now. We don't design for recycling. I mean, and we really need to put the onus on the manufacturers of the products and say that you own it, all of that packaging.
So are you pushing that legislatively? I mean, to,
They try it somehow. It's just.
Okay, but where are we talking about? In this
Yeah.
state? No.
Would that
Plain
have
and
to be,
simple,
would
no.
that have to be federal legislation if it was going after, or could a state,
Look at all this.
do states enforce that at all? Are there any,
A
like,
state,
does
yeah, well, a
California
state
do
can,
that?
yes, California does, New York State has laws, Minnesota has pushed some laws forward. Iowa actually tends to lead in a lot of sustainability efforts. So there are some, but they're not necessarily in that manufacturing area, but they're still, there are things that they can do, you can do on a community basis or on a national basis in terms of, and some of the model goes back to that ban on certain activities. Some of it is requiring, okay, if you make a tire as a manufacturer, you have to, there has to be a cost built in there to take that through its end of life somewhere. But that's not going to happen voluntarily for the most part. So there's lots of, Europe does this everywhere. British Columbia is probably the leader in North America in terms of EPR legislation, what they require in terms of recycling and what they require manufacturers to do in terms of handling the whole cycle of their products' life cycle of their product.
EPR is what?
extended producer responsibility. There's product stewardship and there's extended producer responsibility. Product stewardship is looking at how to deal with waste that's already been created and finding ways to beneficially reuse it or use it, in a better way. Extended producer responsibility is actually taking that concept one step farther and throwing it back at the producers and saying, you generate this widget, when it's done when it's lived its life, we don't want you to throw it in the garbage and landfill it. It shouldn't be landfilled. It should be brought back to manufacturer, and you have to deal with it. Because then once you start pushing them back, they start thinking about how to make things that are recyclable in the long run.
And if we could convince people that the message really is, you don't really want to own things, you want to use things. What if you didn't own a lot of these things, and in fact you leased them from the manufacturer?
Yeah.
That they were responsible at the end. I mean, a set of tires. You use the tires. Do you really want to own those worn tires when you're done with them? Of course not.
I put them on my wall, come on.
Yeah, exactly. So if we can turn
never
that
get tired of
message
it.
around, that we don't need to own as much or really have to have all that stuff. But at the end, we're just using it, we're leasing it. And at the end, somebody else, the manufacturer, is responsible for it. Give it back to them. And they'll find ways to make things better for
Yeah,
this
I mean,
planet.
some of the carpet companies they do
Right.
that now too.
Yeah.
And there is, and it's not, once you start doing it, it becomes economically viable for sure, because all of a sudden if they're making a product out of material that is known to be recyclable, can come back to them, they're creating their own feedstock for future products. So they're creating, this circular economy.
So why can't we get them on board?
That's a different.
Startup
model.
costs
It's
of
a whole-
doing that.
Well, so.
It's.
Well,
Do
who
you really
does
want-
that now? Let's ask the
Right.
question.
Okay.
What manufacturer in America does that?
Does Georgia Carpet?
There are a couple of carpet companies that do that. They basically are leasing. You wouldn't carpet your room like this where it's wall to wall kind of thing. It's
Mhm.
going to be in tiles of sorts.
Yeah.
And then
we
you
have
send them
that
back
now,
when
yeah.
end of life. They send it back to the company, and
Right.
And there's a cost involved in there someplace, but there are.
Padding companies do much of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We tend to recycle most of our padding. When I was in the industry, that's what we did. So,
What about like when I go to the Verizon store and they try and upsell me on the new model and I give them my old phone? Like, is that kind of the same concept, or are they recycling it or refurbishing it when I give them my own one and they give me the big new
They are
cool one?
recycling. Cell phones actually, a lot of them are refurbished if they're, value and move down the line someplace else. There are actually a lot of, and there is a bigger industry that is developing in terms of recycling electronics, for example, but it's not being pushed by the manufacturers. It's being pushed, in Wisconsin, we have, a law that bans electronics from going into the waste stream. And there's also, part of that legislation also requires manufacturers who sell X amount of TVs and electronics and everything else that manufacturer has to actually recycle a percentage then annually to stay as an authorized, what's the term there, electronics, authorized.
vendors.
Yeah, well, anyway, to be able to sell, so if Toshiba wants to sell electronics in Wisconsin, they have to agree to recycle a certain percent based on their sales. And every manufacturer, and that's certified through the Wisconsin DNR in terms of it's a statewide program for recycling electronics. So that's the state setting up a program pushing back at the manufacturers to take their material back. So it's a slightly different approach. We consider it an EPR law, extended producer responsibility law, and it works pretty well. It's kept, but there's a cost to it. You can't just take your electronics back to Best Buy or someplace and they'll take it for free. They'll charge it. Take it back to my facility, we charge by the pound for everything. But we do recycle it. There is a market for that, the materials that are in electronics. So they are being refurbished. There's some really cool places around, in fact. There's one in La Crosse called Dynamic that recycles a lot of electronics. And it's really neat the things they can take. A lot of electronics use very a certain number of rare
Yeah.
metals, rare minerals. And, the best source of them are recycled electronics. So, so I skipped through a whole lot of this. You want to see what our actual recycling facility looks like? Wow. So, okay, we'll start at the beginning of that part. So, there you go. My building on the left.
I've seen that.
Inside of my building on the
I
right.
wondered what I was looking at.
Yeah. We basically, the way our system works, it basically, garbage trucks come, unload in the building. We pick up a front end loader, put it into a compactor, which compacts it, shoves it into the back of that semi, who hauls it down to here. So that's the Appleton facility. And we do tours. We give tours. And I was thinking, of course, we'd have a quorum then if we had the whole committee there, but that's all right, isn't it?
It is.
As long as it's noticed.
Yeah. So we do tours through there. We have there's catwalks up there, so you can walk through the whole thing. I've had all the City of Green Bay garbage and recycling truck drivers come through on 2 different tours. The City of Green Bay's garbage and recycling pickups have gotten better since then, because those guys are tagging carts right and left now, having seen what happens when it comes here. So they're rejecting recyclables at the curb and pushing it back
Nice.
to the person to get a better material.
Yeah.
And De Pere does it as a matter of course as well.
Mhm.
The communities that have municipally run pickups do a great job. The ones that don't, plain and simple. So then it gets down there, it gets dumped on their floor. They put it into this, it's a big, it's about the size of this room actually, the metering bin, which fluffs up the stuff that's in there and then feeds it up a conveyor at a measured rate, so that the people in that room right there, the pre-sort line, there's 6 to 8 people working in there at any given time, and their job is to pick out all the stuff that's not recyclable or that's big. So all the car parts that come through, all the ropes, the chains, the bowling balls, the animal parts, the guns, the...
Guns?
Oh, yeah. That's probably once a week we get a gun.
Really?
And now, it's funny, in Brown County, we don't get it. Whoever's throwing stuff, in deer hunting season, Winnebago and Outagamie get a lot of deer carcasses coming in. To the point where they actually set up separate collection dumpsters outside their building.
Recycled?
Well, people get lazy, and there are dumpsters, and they'll just throw anything into the dumpsters. It doesn't have a lot.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't
So-
have to be a curbside
Right, so
thing. It's gonna be
think
a
about that.
dumpster, yeah.
On the first and third floor.
Half of all the material going through this facility is
It's probably
coming
the
from
200.
houses, the other half is coming from everybody else. So it's multi-family.
So dumpsters that say recycling.
Yeah, people just,
Pretty aggressive.
if-
Like at a campsite or something.
well, at an apartment building, if you have 2 dumpsters, one says recycling, one says garbage, and your garbage one gets full because it's move-out time at the end of the month.
Right.
The recycling bin gets everything else. And that's really common. Multifamily residential complexes are the worst for recycling. And that, it's true worldwide, it's just the way it is. It's a group mentality that changes. Plus, you don't have a bin in your house, and you're not putting that bin out on your curb, so there's a whole different mindset on that. So we try to do as much as we can. We were actually looking at geofencing, electronic messaging, straight to a bunch of the apartments, and then we started counting up the apartment complexes in the 3 counties we cover, and they charge you for every geofence. Can't afford to do that, but it'd be one way of getting it. That's why that's one of the reasons we don't want plastic. All those white and colored things, so those are rollers that spin really fast as a way of separating paper. And the gaps between it are where the containers fall through when the paper comes through there. All those things are plastic bags of one kind or another wrapped, or ropes or strings wrapped around the rollers. So once a shift, at a minimum, somebody has to climb into this piece of machinery and cut it out.
It
And
sounds dangerous.
It is, it can be. We haven't had anybody get hurt, but they have to get into a full a safety harness, hook onto the side of the machine so that they slip and fall, they're not gonna go very far.
So the paper falls down, is that what you
Paper,
said?
no,
The
paper
rolls-
floats up.
The
So
paper
actually, the paper is
rides.
riding over the top of it.
Okay.
Depending on the size and the speed of
Okay,
those, it
uh-huh.
will lift cardboard versus office
Oh, yeah,
paper versus
okay.
something else. We only actually separate cardboard and everything else now. We used to do newspaper, but there's no market for newspaper anymore, and the mills have said just mix it in with everything else. So we don't separate the newspaper.
There's newspaper still?
I get the Rude newspaper a couple times a week.
Sunday time.
There's always the
I'm
ads,
just
that's
joking.
what my
Press
husband
time.
reads.
Joking.
Yeah, yeah. So part of the operation is also, there's 2 mechanical sorters, actually 3 mechanical sorters if you count. We also have a electromagnet that pulls out all the metal, the ferrous metals. And that's really kind of, I think that's the neatest thing to watch, because, I mean, there's a conveyor belt going one way, like down this table, and there's a conveyor belt above it that's spinning along, and all this stuff's flying up off the conveyor belt up onto the belt above it, because the belt above it is
That's
an
what you-
electromagnet.
Can you get us a video of that?
Well, we actually have a video of the whole operation. You can see it. We also use these 2 pieces of equipment. The one on the bottom is called an eddy current. It actually charges aluminum, and when you charge aluminum, it becomes, I don't even know what to say, John. It's not repellent, is it? I guess it is. It's like the back end of a magnet. It pushes it off to one
Right.
area.
Repellent.
And the other one, this is where the problem comes in with plastic water bottles. Because that, it says multi-sort IR, it's an infrared optical sorter, and it's shining infrared light through the plastic bottles that come underneath it, all the material that comes underneath it, and shines it onto an array, a sensor below it, and it's looking for a certain wavelength of light. And that's, so then it's automatically sense it, hits it with a jet of air, and it pushes it off. It actually pushes it down into a collection facility. The problem is it can't tell the difference between a water bottle and a clamshell, because they're the same wavelength. Their chemical composition is somewhat different in some manner. They've been heated differently. So it sorts out that stuff. And obviously, our system isn't doing a very good job, because all those aluminum cans should have been collected by that thing before it went to this way. So we're putting in those 2 pieces of equipment are being replaced this year to the tune of $1.2 million. Just between labor and we're praying that they're only going to take the 4 days they promised, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Because if we're closed for more than 4 days in a row, we don't have the capacity in the system to hold all the material that's coming in. And then we have to start shipping it someplace else to the tune of around $120,000 a day.
Holy
So keep your fingers crossed. Watch what happens in April and May this year.
Don't throw anything away or recycle anything.
Yeah, well, that's part of it is, talking to communities and say, hey, would you mind shifting your collection days by, and we may, Green Bay is the biggest one out there. Steve Renier and I just talked to him last week. He's like, well, we'll do what we're, if you need to do something, we'll see what happens. And then the other part of the collection is people. And there's 2 full-time shifts working down there. One's fully staffed and one's hasn't been staffed since I started 10 years ago fully, just because we can't get enough people to work second shift. And we've raised the rate. It's now $13 an hour to do sorting. But if you have any kind of vertigo, you can't do it. Because you've got to, I did a sort a couple of years ago, we were doing a waste sort just to see what kind of material is coming in from a particular hauler. I volunteered to do that 2-hour shift, and it didn't bother me while I was doing it. But as soon as the conveyor stopped and I stepped away, it was like, wow, the whole world's just going around in circles. You get a little nauseous. So they do tests of people, but there are basically 20 people or more on each shift working there, hand sorting everything out. So those on the right-hand side where it says 11 and 12, and 10, 11, 12, those are actually paper lines. The green things there's one that's labeled 6. Those are actually those offset. That's where the plastic bags are getting caught in. So those are, the farthest one is where all the cardboard goes. The closer ones were originally newspaper and mixed paper. Now they're both mixed paper. And the guy in the bottom is doing quality control for all the plastic water bottles, and basically he's looking for anything that got through that has some value to it. All the milk jugs and laundry jugs are sorted by hand. There's 3 people standing, picking all that stuff off the line as it goes in front. And those guys are basically picking out plastic. That's their job. Mostly what they're looking for are plastic bags that are coming through the paper. So, and that's what kind of the system, that's an old picture of the system. We've actually got, once it gets through the whole system, it goes into a set of bunkers of storage containers that are separated by the type of material that's in there. And as the system calls for it, they'll empty out one bunker and it'll go onto a conveyor, it'll go to a baler. So we have 2 balers in there now, one strictly for paper and one for everything else, because the paper needs more compression, and we get more paper than anything else too. That, right past that gray building, there's an area in there where we actually take out all the, actually, I'm sorry, it's before that. We take out all the glass as soon as possible. It actually gets crushed up and taken out. And that's why you put the water bottle caps back on, because we ran it, originally we said we'd take it out because there were concerns we'd get too much liquid from people doing water or soda in their bottles. We found it wasn't a major issue because the water bottles were getting burst anyway in the compression process, so there really wasn't anything left in them. But if you take the caps off and throw them into your recycling bin, they don't make it into the system, because anything that's about 2 inches or so in size goes into glass right away. It gets pulled, the system pulls out the glass, it's crushed glass right away, because glass is very abrasive, it's heavy, it has no value. And anything that's smaller than 2 inches falls into that and then goes out into the garbage as it gets sorted out. But if you leave it on the water bottle, it'll actually go through the system, and then the companies that buy the water bottles will actually recycle the plastic as well. They'll be considered valuable enough.
So is this just true in our area? Like if you went to Madison, is it a different system? So you
No, this is the
It's
same
pretty
kind.
much-
Yeah, it's pretty uniform.
Okay.
When we built this in 2009, we weren't breaking, this was not a new concept. This was kind of the current state of the art. The only major difference is we're replacing that sorter with a newer technology sorter. The eddy current's just going to be a bigger one and a little bit faster. And then the technology's gone to artificial intelligence robots that are actually replacing people. And so these robots have these multi-arms and it'll sit and pick out stuff on the line. But they're really expensive. They're not that great yet. I think Waste Management has, they have Germantown, they have recycling facility. I think they have 4 of them down there. But they still have trouble when you get like that kind of stuff. So that's the process. We recycle other stuff. We handle other stuff. We have our hazardous waste facility.
You said all the glass is just going to the dump?
No, actually no. We can't. Law says you can't put it in the landfill.
Okay.
We use it as road building material. We actually clean up a bunch of it. There's a company called Strategic Materials. They've got a big plant in southern Wisconsin in East Troy that they just built and opened 2 years ago that recycles glass, and there's a big facility that they have in the Twin Cities. But the cost of shipping it that far so much exceeds the value of the glass, because glass is basically sand, that we can't afford to do it. To get it to Janesville or to East Troy, it would cost us somewhere around $15 to $25 a ton to ship it to them for material, and they're not going to pay us. They're not going to give us anything for it. So it's just not worth it. We actually have a company in Wapaka that's buying about a quarter to a third of our glass at $5 a ton, and they're not charging for transport, and they use it for sandblasting material.
So you're just giving it to DOT or?
Actually, it's not even leaving the landfill. It's used as road decking.
Oh.
So it's used
So
to
you-
build roads in the
I
landfill,
see.
essentially. So it's essentially, at the end of the day, it's getting landfill. It's used as gravel by the county highway department in Allegheny County around the landfill area to rebuild roads as they get beat up. It's pretty dirty. It's hard to clean up. So there's a lot of little pieces of plastic, little pieces of metal, and oh, by the way, we don't take shredded paper in our recycling system anymore.
What?
We don't take shredded paper anymore because we can't keep.
Even if it's all baked?
Doesn't matter, we can't keep it contained anymore. We've just found we can't keep it contained. It's going everywhere but into the system.
Oh, we need to have a parade.
We need to have shredding events where, because the companies that do it actually take that straight to the mill. And then, so it's contained in it, it's great. I mean, but we can't sort it. We can't keep it contained in the bags. It just goes everywhere and gets through everything else. A lot of it ends up in glass, which isn't a huge issue because it decomposes to nothing eventually. And the companies that buy it don't really care about the paper. They're more concerned about plastics.
What about textiles? And see, you mean
Just-
clothing?
We don't do it, but
You just got an arrows message stream on that today.
were you part of that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, I just was looking at that, let's
So we
see.
can, you know, if I got an old shirt I want to get rid of, I can recycle it?
Used clothing, there's Chicago Textile Recycling and Milwaukee Textile Recycling. Wipeco out of Chicago and CTC Supplies out of Milwaukee are probably the two places in our neck of the woods that recycle textiles. And Goodwill takes a lot of their stuff for recycling too. So
Well, just
if
give
if you've got clean material, like my wife donated a whole bunch of sewing material that she had stockpiled from before she got carpal tunnel, and girls used to do a lot of sewing. And gave it to Goodwill, and they were happy to have it. People buy it from them, but they also send it to a textile recycler or sell it to rural countries. So, they recycle a lot of fiber, a lot of textile. And there's also a company called Use Again, USAGAN. They have those boxes, and they used to have boxes all over town, like a Goodwill.
Oh, yeah, we had trouble with those boxes, yeah.
Yep. And so there's only 4 in the state now left. I just checked today when we were on that forum. I was looking at, okay, where are they? They were taking shoes and textiles. They were commercially run. They weren't nonprofit, but they were still recycling them, which was better than throwing them in the garbage.
Right.
I have a student that's working for Wherever Recycling,
Okay.
and they haven't made their way up to Green Bay yet, but they started over in Eau Claire, they're down in Madison, or already in Milwaukee, so they're kind of...
Wherever?
Wherever.
Is that the one that was based out of Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay, because I went to their website and they only list locations in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Sounds more like
Exactly.
whatever.
But if you saw their Facebook page,
Okay.
they're working their way
Great.
over here too.
I like that. Another part of, about 25% of the whole stuff that we throw away is organic material of one kind or another. It's food waste. There's a huge chunk of
How
our,
much did you say? It's 25%?
25% of what's in a landfill is food waste.
Oh, there's an opportunity.
It is, it's a huge opportunity. Our state hasn't really, and we're, the little program we have here is one of only 3. Are you still working on it?
Yes, slowly. We do have a model picked out to bring on campus.
So there's basically Stevens Point area, Madison area, actually 4, I guess. Stevens Point, Madison, Milwaukee, and Green Bay are the 4 communities right now in the state that have some type of organic food waste collection. Madison is running it as a pilot. This is their second pilot program. They're working with, what I think was a pretty small number of households this time around. Anyway, they're doing curbside collection for a targeted number of
Oh,
households.
they are?
Yeah. Milwaukee does it, but you pay, I think the city supplies the carts, and then, but you have to pay like $8 a month, or
Yeah, what's their company?
they're working with Compost Crusaders.
Yes.
Out of Milwaukee.
Compost Crusaders.
Oh, that's a woman who started a company with, one garbage truck and just started going around the area doing her own collection of food waste and other compostables. And now has a contract with the city basically to do that service citywide. And then Stevens Point, one of the students in the waste program over there, Kelly Adlington, works with an organic farmer, and she and some of her friends, they have a farm who they work with, where they actually do a subscription service pickup of they started out with a white van with buckets in it and delivered them to the curb and came. Yeah, it's pretty interesting listening to how they started that one in Stevens Point area. But they've got a farmer who's working at Ledgeview Gardens was doing some work with compostable stuff for a while, but I don't think he's doing much more of a program now. And so all our stuff goes to the Oshkosh's digester right now, which is not a great sustainable solution. It's a 60-mile drive every time they take a load of stuff down there, but there's got to be a better way of doing it. Brown County's program is really aimed at trying to see if we can if you know anybody who wants to start a curbside compost collection program, I have a list of 250 households, and it's growing. We are getting a family a week right now.
Really? That's
Adding
fabulous.
on to the program, and I still
Yeah.
only have one stupid dumpster. And
I go
Gotta
there.
get
So
to the, gotta get somewhere on that east side that will work well. And I may just have to bite the bullet. Put one over there somewhere where I don't want to, so see how it works. GB, our county exec did not like that idea.
I had a feeling, but
You can't just take it to the yard waste.
Food waste, no.
No.
Food
Nope.
waste, because because there could be
Food,
meat in
fats.
it, or?
Rat fats.
That, oh, so they're not, it's not just green
No, it's,
Green
it's.
fruits
Anything.
It's
anything?
all
Okay.
this stuff.
Wow,
Yeah.
oh, I see.
And that thing on the bottom that says only the certified compostable bags are accepted, no, that's not
Not
true anymore.
anymore.
Oshkosh said no more compostable plastics of any kind.
Oh, wow.
Because.
No plants?
No plastics of any kind.
Oh, plastic.
No
Compostable plastics.
compostable plastics, because what was happening was people were not, they would say, oh, plastic bag, and they'd ignore the compostable part, and they're getting way too much plastic, just regular plastic in there. Also, plastic, compostable plastic bag silverware, it doesn't break down at any
I never heard of all that. I never heard.
compostable.
Yeah, plastic.
They're green.
Sure.
They're light green.
Oh.
But they're not really,
Takes
some of them
a
are
while.
plant-based materials and some are not.
Oh.
So there's also issues with that. So there, this is your cheer, I can be, I'm much more cheerful when I talk to kids than I am to you. There's a lot you can do, guys. Here's what you should be doing. There's ways of doing it. The problem we have now that we're trying to deal with, recycling is, that it's basically stagnant, in terms of percentages. How many pounds per person we're generating for recycling is pretty much plateaued. How much we recycle on a per capita basis. Also, though, we are actually, this is statistics through 2015 from the EPA. We're not generating as much waste. That seems to be plateauing as well. But that's because we see volume as people, we see the volume, we don't see the weight. Weights have gotten lighter, but there's more stuff out there because a lot of it's shifting.
Oh.
Pouches, Waste Management, the company Waste Management, actually I got a number of these slides from them. They've done they've looked at the greenhouse gas emissions, or a model of what the environmental cost is to between pouches and like baby food jars.
Mm-hmm.
Even though baby food jars are recyclable and pouches are not, because transportation is so expensive and emits so many, there's so many emissions from the transportation of things, that it's actually better to have pouches and plastic pouches.
Well, like this.
Like-
Like how many drinks do I have to take before it actually
Pays
pays its weight
Right.
in the carbon that it took to
Yeah.
create that?
Yeah, I
Compared
did-
to a plastic bottle that was like, boom.
I did that whole thing with like laundry detergent, like which was most environmentally friendly, powder, liquid, or the little pods. And of course, the powder, although in a recyclable container, is heavier.
So the cost of transport is,
Yes.
it's like, okay,
Yes.
lightweight.
So box
flex-
wine it is.
Box wine, it is, oh, yeah. Hey, this is box wine.
No.
Have you ever seen the Chianti that comes in the 50 gallon?
No.
Actually, what you pay for when you buy wine is the bottle.
Is the bottle,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
is the-
Yeah.
Not
It
the-
is
I'm
true.
okay with that.
If
Me
you go
too.
to Metro Market in Milwaukee, which is Pick and Save's like upscale,
Oh.
it's in Shorewood. You can buy, they have a wine and beer bar there. You can buy a full 16-ounce beer there for $2. All craft beer, really good beers that are normally, $6 to $8 to $10 a bottle. If you buy a 16-ounce glass, it's $2. If you buy a 32-ounce container, it's $10 because you're paying for the aluminum to put it in. They're crawlers. So the cost of the stuff that's in there is negligible. It's the container that costs a lot. And that's why flexible packaging is the way industry's going, because it's cheaper to ship.
Right.
It's cheaper to make, but we can't recycle them because
It
they're.
goes in the landfill.
It goes in the landfill because they're
Right.
multi-layered plastics. So it's, anytime you have more than one plastic in a container, it's not gonna be recyclable. You can't separate two kinds of plastic. Europe's solution to a lot of this is waste energy. So they burn a lot of it. They incinerate a lot of plastics, which I'm not sure is such a bad idea. But we can't compete against natural gas.
Right.
So, and then you also have this problem. So I thought this was crazy when I saw this stat. So it used to be 62,000 bottles in a ton. Now it's 97,000 bottles in a ton. Because everything's it's lightweighting, trying to get things lighter.
And you noticed, I know the 2 bottles up there, the cap, actually they redesigned the cap.
Yeah, to make
I
them
met the
smaller.
guy who did that.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, it's more of a cost saving for them, but, yeah.
Even aluminum, I didn't think aluminum cans had changed that much, but
Oh, they're definitely lighter.
much lighter. Not quite as much, but
Yeah, they feel like they're not as substantial as they used to be.
So, yeah. So there's a lot of this, there's a lot of also what's happening in the recycling world. And I hear, doom and gloom all the time because China doesn't take a lot of our scrap anymore. Truthfully, on a global basis, that's a really good thing because we were sending them all sorts of crap. We were sending them garbage, and basically, even with all the other issues with, Chinese government way of doing things, they said several years ago that we're going to clean up our environment, we're going to make our water drinkable, our air breathable, and our land tillable in the next 10 years. And part of it is we're not going to accept waste from the rest of the world.
Right.
Okay, well, China doesn't accept waste from us anymore. They're cleaning up their environment. I can't fault them for that. But it does have an effect on us. Because first there was green fence, then now we're under national sword, which bans certain types of plastics and paper from getting into the Chinese markets.
National swords.
And this was really telling. So I just got this. Do you see this resource recycling mag? This is last month's issue. They had a couple of these graphs in there. So look at the bottom one. Chinese imports of recovered plastic in pounds from all countries. So this is how much they used to take in. They used to take in, that's like 16 billion pounds in 2016. 16 billion pounds a year of plastics Chinese were taking in from all over the world. They're less than 100,000 pounds now in 2 years. So that had a huge impact on our markets.
They're doing the extended producer responsibility back to the countries.
There you go.
No, they're not actually, they're not doing that. They're just saying, it's not
Not
EPR.
taking your-
No, they're not, I don't see them changing how they're manufacturing things, which is really the key to it. They're just not taking.
No, but they're making, like, the US have to be responsible
Oh,
for
they're
what
forcing us to do,
Yes.
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 Yeah.
But we could send it somewhere else.
No, we can't, because the
Oh, we
market's
can't?
saturated. Well, yeah, the market's saturated. China's not taking 16 billion pounds of stuff, or taking, they were at 30, that was tons, short tons, so 30, they were in 2016, they were 30 million tons of paper, and they're now less than, well, actually, I think that.
At 10.
Around 10 million tons. That's got to go someplace. You're not going to ship it, you can ship some of it to Thailand and India, but they don't have the market. China is the biggest
Yeah.
economy out there to handle all this stuff.
That's good.
What they did was they shut down any of the marginal recycling facilities in China. The government just shut them down. They said, you're no longer allowed to produce paper or recycle material because you're part of the issue. One of the things that has happened, though, is that one of the biggest paper companies in the world, Nine Dragons, what you call it?
In Maine you're talking about?
The one that, well, no, they bought the facility over in Byron, Wisconsin.
Oh.
Nine Dragons. It's Nine Dragons I think is the paper company in China. So they're buying, because they can't get stock in the US, they're buying paper mills in the US and that are recycling paper facilities and then generating wood, either the pulp or the paper, I'm not sure which they're doing, and sending it to China so they can feed their manufacturers there. So it's been interesting. It's, like I say, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Economically, it's made our recycling system 3 years ago, earned $7 million in profit, basically, retained earnings, because we're public, we don't have profit. This year, we're probably, well, 2019, I think we had maybe $100,000 in earnings because of the shift. So it costs more to push back in
Wow.
the system, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's still better to recycle than it is to landfill. So all things being equal, because it costs exactly as much to pick up your garbage container as it does to pick up your recycling container. But your recycling container is going to feed industry and going into a circular economy, and there's about 20 people employed in recycling for every one person employed in landfilling. So you're having a huge economic benefit by recycling, so you gotta keep recycling. We gotta increase that recycling amount, because even though the markets are bad, that'll change. Things will get, the US economy or the industry will find a way to use all this raw material. There'll be something out there. Industries, I mean, a lot of this right now with the markets as low as that, they look at that and say, wow, this is really cheap feedstock, so I should use it for something in the future. Keep going.
But not our roads.
Well, but, it's part of it is when I look at that solution, that's kind of an end of life. It's recycling in some ways, but it's not really recycling the plastic. It's using it, it's not much different than us using glass in our landfill for road building. It's a one and done. So there's nothing circular about it. You can't necessarily, what happens when you take that road bed out and grind it up and make, right now, they grind up asphalt all the time and reuse it. If you've got plastic mixed in there, what does that mean? Can you reuse it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about that side of the engineering to see whether it will work.
They said you could, but.
I hear a lot of things.
Right.
We get asked about a lot of technology that's out there.
Yeah.
So I'm skeptical, I have to be skeptical about how it works. They also said they wanted the plastic separated by type. And we separate out 1s and 2s. And if we're lucky, we'll get 4s and 5s, to a certain extent, but that's all hand sorted. We're not going to do anything else, because the amount of labor and time and the cost of doing that isn't worth it for that. We'd rather just mix it all together and say, here, you get everything mixed. That's what when we were selling mixed plastics, that's what we were doing. Anything that wasn't a 1 and 2 was going into mixed plastics and sold as a group. And there were lots of buyers for it, but they were all overseas, or most of them were overseas.
So what should the city of Green Bay be focusing on?
What should the city of Green Bay read? If the easy one would be trying to find a way to do more food waste collection and composting. It's a big chunk of what's out there. Organics are a huge chunk, and there are lots of places around the country that are doing it. Massachusetts, it's statewide. New York, it's getting that way. New York City does it. Dubuque, Iowa does it. There's places, Madison, Milwaukee are doing it now on a pilot basis. I'm not saying it's cheap, but that certainly is, it has a big impact.
Extend the life of your landfill, and
Right.
also reduce the amount of methane that's produced
Yeah.
from that landfill.
Take it right out of garbage.
It's pretty simple.
It's very
It
simple.
is very simple.
It is pretty.
It's not like complicated. People with a van and some buckets started one.
Exactly.
The most complicated, not hard science. though.
Yeah, the most complicated part is having the disposal site.
Yeah.
Having a place.
And
that-
managing it.
that
Yeah.
can manage it, exactly. And a lot of it can be managed through, Stevens Point, they're doing it through farming practices. So it's
So they're
not,
partnering
they're not
with
sending it
farms?
to, they're not sending it to a digester of any kind. I mean, a digester is great because it accelerates the process for breaking it down, and it's easily done year round without,
Where are the
temperatures and stuff.
bigger scale ones though, that are integrated, that are farther along in their programs? Where do they have to set up facilities?
They have to set up facilities. I haven't explored it in depth recently, so I can't give you a good answer. Biodigesters are a cool technology. John knows a lot more about them than I do. Oh, you do. Come on, you're setting one up on campus, or something smaller.
Not a bio, not really.
Well, it's kind of a,
More organics, it's a compost system.
it's a macerator, right?
Yeah, we have it macerated and then it goes into the compost system, but
Yeah.
not really collecting gas or.
I mean, Wisconsin tried building a whole lot of biodigesters at the farm level over the last decade, and some have failed pretty dramatically. I mean, they're just not there. Farmers were sold these digesters as a way of dealing with all their
Yeah.
waste. And that.
But people like love the yard waste compost stuff. I mean,
But food waste is more complicated than just
Yeah.
yard waste, and that's the problem. You gotta get, high enough temperatures someplace, you have to have a facility that can do that.
yeah, but you would have a demand for it once
Yep.
it's finished.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've got, what I look at is, Brown County, through our pilot program, actually has set up the resources for someone else to do it. We're not gonna do collections, for us as
Right.
Brown County to do collections is a huge investment, because we don't have any collection facilities, don't have any collection equipment, don't have anything to do that. But one woman in a truck in Milwaukee was very successful, so you can do it, you could do it that way. I'd be happy to give away, with permission of the people who are participating, go through that process. But I'd be happy to give away our list of people who are doing food waste collections at home already.
I would be happy for someone to come and get my compost every week at my
Yeah,
house.
instead of me having to run, yeah.
So, there's a willing market right here, just given the number of people who are participating in a voluntary program. They've got to come all the way over to South Broadway and drop off stuff in the dumpster, and we've got 250 families that are part of that. I mean, it's more than 500 people.
And
So
what about restaurants?
restaurants?
And the school district?
They do. A lot of them work with Sanimax. A lot of them
Okay.
are working with Sanimax, but.
Sanimax, they're
Really,
comprehensive
this is,
in their-
well, they're
yeah.
they're national. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at where they do food waste collections,
Mhm.
it's from here to the East Coast,
Okay.
in the northern tier of states. I just look at it as, that's not necessarily, they're doing it, I'm sure they're doing a lot of it with biodigesters.
Mhm.
They're treating a lot of it with biodigesters, because you don't want to put it in the landfill, it's generating methane. I just don't know that that's the best solution long-term for some of this. I don't know if I have a good solution.
Okay.
But nonetheless, I think there's a real opportunity in our area, whether it's led by, municipality, or whether it's led from private for-profit, private nonprofit, whatever. There's a willingness in this community to do that,
Mhm.
to people to collect their food waste and deal with it in some manner. So I think that's a real, something that could really be developed in our area. We got all the pieces.
As far as food waste and like meat packaging companies, and like I know there was a company that did some sort of animal processing or whatever, and they had what they called blood ponds located, on site. And I mean, do you guys collect blood and animal remains, and does that go to landfill too, or how does?
Well, we don't.
or-
If it's liquid.
What do they do with all
Yeah,
that?
if it's liquid, it's solid waste. So if it's liquid, we don't take it, is
Okay.
kind of the bottom line. A lot of that now, all of what comes out of the meat processors actually goes to the biodigester in Denmark. They were, I'm not sure, I just read recently that they just went bankrupt like last month. But they
I think
were
I saw
sending a lot of it to biodigester, a liquid digester. So the digester in Oshkosh is more like a big compost facility. Most digesters are liquid facilities. They're dealing with all the material that's in there, breaking it down, and I don't know what you call the output of it.
Aren't there any like rules or policies or regs that like prevent people from doing it on their properties? Like setting up a commercial?
Oh, commercial?
Or like this person
Yes.
who goes around in a van? Like, or someone has like 5 acres, they can just.
There are rules in terms of what you can spread, what kind of material you can mix in with your soil, how often you can spread manure, things like that. Ag rules. So there's some limitations in there, but in terms of, and the state made it a little more difficult in the last couple of years in terms of composting facilities, because now they fall under the same regs as landfills. so they're supposed to be
Oh.
managing methane. We actually looked at setting up a regional, was that your graduate or John's graduate student who did?
It's been John's.
Yeah. Looking at setting up a regional compost facility, yard waste facility, because at some point, all the municipalities are gonna have to show that they're managing their composting in such a manner as to limit how much methane is being released. But that, the DNR hasn't really pushed hard on that at this point, because it's really hard to do. So, when you're dealing with food waste, you're gonna have that issue at some point. It's gonna generate methane. Anytime anything decomposes, it generates methane, so what do you do with it? Again, I don't have great answers for a lot of this, there's just there's so many parts out there. It's a good thing I'm not a specialist in anything. I'm a generalist in everything, so I can say, well, this is what needs to be worked on, but I don't have an answer for it yet.
So what would it take for the city of Green Bay to launch a pilot project of curbside composting? What would our next
Truck,
steps be?
some containers, and a willingness.
Okay.
Well,
And a
place
piece
to
of-
put it.
And a budget, yeah.
Oh, couldn't we put it where it currently goes? At Brown County?
Our dumpster?
Yeah.
It's a 2-yard dumpster.
Okay, some more dumpsters, I guess?
Yeah. That's.
Plus that has a little hole, so you couldn't do lots and lots, yeah, it had to be different dumpsters.
Well, the whole top does it.
It does lift up.
That's how
Oh,
they
okay.
empty it, yeah. But there are options. I mean, I'm sure we could, that would be part of the process of developing a program, would be looking at what other options are out there. There's some big farming operations, there's some small farming operations. They may want to compost. I don't know enough about it at this point to know whether it'd be real viable. But if Stevens Point can set it up, a lot of that was a willingness by the organic farmer and the woman who actually owns part of the farm, who was a student in waste management, to actually run the program as well, do the collections. And I think they can control what they're doing better. Milwaukee might be a better group to talk to. Well, yeah, I would start out with getting, because I haven't talked to when I set the program up in 2014, I did a lot of research at that time in terms of where things were, but I haven't really done a lot of detailed work lately in terms of what's going on. I just know from talking to my colleagues what's going on a more informal basis, but I haven't put it into a research document, which I need to do to really move forward. And that's what I would do, is start looking at what the steps are that Milwaukee took. Like I said, they did have somebody who was willing to do it, and they have a higher population density and a higher population base, so that she can run a pretty good customer base in that area. But Stevens Point, in Madison, I think their pilot, they started out with a pilot in the downtown area where they did everybody in the downtown area, and that was a couple of years ago, and they abandoned it because they got so much plastic contamination. Now they're doing a targeted pilot. I think it's 80 households. They're only running it for 6 to 8 weeks. The other thing is, I am working with a woman out of the Stevens Point area who has developed an app for phones. It's called Urban, E-R-B-I-N. It's really a cool app. What is it, 2 hours, right? But she's.
Check my battery.
No, I don't need, we can close that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So she's been working with the Village of Weston, which is right outside of Wausau, on their recycling collections, and what the app does is it actually has a barcode scanner, and you can scan any product that's in the database. And the biggest issue is trying to build her database big enough, and it will tell you whether or not it's recyclable.
Oh, cool.
She's also working with Madison on their pilot on their food waste program, and it's telling, so people can scan their food waste or type in a description of what their food is, and it will tell it whether it's accepted in their program. So I've got a proposal from her right now to actually do that with our program here in Brown County, and we'll see if that how well that works. But the goal would be to eventually spread that through to the recycling, curbside recycling stuff, so that you can scan a barcode of any product, and it will tell you in the Tri-County region, is it recyclable? Cool. Or not? So it'll, you're not gonna hit it. I don't know how many people you'll hit, and the cost is not, it's not inexpensive, we'll see how it goes. So there's some neat things out there that we're working on. Waste conferences in 2 weeks in the Dells. 300 of us will be talking about all this stuff.
There you go.
Do you do a lot of like public outreach or education, like, teaching people to just reduce and?
This is number 4 this week.
Okay.
So, yeah, I do. Whenever possible, I do. My job is still split between the port and resource recovery side, so I see Julia all the time because of my port work. I mean, yeah.
But he has these videos on Twitter about recycling. that
I have a YouTube channel.
So you can see Mark on video.
And actually, the recycling shared with the city 12 days of recycling at Christmas time, so those were Facebook posts.
Ooh, I like
So that's
that.
cool. And then look back on our
So
Facebook.
we try to do, the best thing we did was when I started in 2010. In 2011, having come from a regional background, I said, okay, why do we have one facility in Appleton where we're all taking stuff to, but Brown, Outagamie, and Winnebago each tell you to take different stuff to the recycling facility? Why is our message different? So we started consolidating our messaging, and that made a huge difference. That's something we got to keep on doing. But the education, we spent $90,000 on mailing last year. That was it. That was a one and done. We did one mailing, and that was it.
I don't think I got anything.
Yeah, you did. I know you did, because we've already had this conversation. Can't fool me.
I recycled it.
That's okay, as long as it got recycled properly. Did we even get through the rest of your agenda?
There's one other item.
Adjournment?
So no, shall we move on?
Yeah.
To the update?
Sure.
Okay.
Moving on to updates. Thank you, Mark, for that presentation.
Thank you.
By the way, I love what I do, so.
Yes, it
Well,
shows.
Yeah, very knowledgeable. And depressing.
But no, don't let it depress you.
That's all right, I think about climate change all day. So
Yeah, see, it's
a
not
different
that.
thing to be depressed about.
Recycling is a lot
It's
more
nice.
optimistic than climate
A
change.
breath of fresh air.
Because we know there are things we can do, and people definitely agree with it, except our state legislature, so.
That seems to be the common theme in a lot of the problems we have, is getting a more agreeable state legislature.
So anyway, the update.
Update?
I'll go. We're working on a green infrastructure planning effort, which is a lot of just like mapping right now with a graduate student at Madison. She came up and presented her first set of maps. Mark came and we pulled together city staff to have 2 separate meetings to kind of go over them. She's going to actually be committed to this project for the next year, so that's really awesome. So we should use her. I think they're thinking about setting up kind of a GIS tool to go out and inventory green infrastructure in the community this summer. So that's one thing that's coming out of that. It's a lot more complicated than shocker. I mean, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, so that's happening still, slowly. I think we could use some grant money to move that along. Or I don't know, I'm looking forward to the resilience coordinator, that's what I'm trying to say. And then we also have been working on the code audit, because the grant's really starting to move now, and just yesterday we hosted Celestine hired a consultant to do the actual in-the-weeds audit of the local codes and ordinances. But then also yesterday we did like a kickoff workshop with city staff. That was really well attended, I thought, and we went over green infrastructure, codes and ordinances, and then they did a community scoping exercise to talk about how green infrastructure fits in the community and what our current uses are of it and so forth like that. I don't know. So that was, you were there.
Yep,
So,
correct.
so I thought that went pretty well, but I don't know. I didn't
Correct,
sit
so.
through it.
Do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. I think it was a good group of people that were brought together who are knowledgeable about what we already have going on in the city. And so, yeah, I thought it was beneficial to be there.
It was nice. There was a really diverse, there's a lot of different departments there. IT, parks, planning, finance, the law
Yep.
department. So So it's going to be pretty quick. So by the summer, there will be recommendations to look at potentially. So
Energy, clean energy, we're meeting once a month. And again, focusing on city buildings and other electrical and fossil fuel uses by the city outside of the buildings. NWTC is crunching some numbers for us. And yeah.
There's a few more things. I sent some
things out.
data and they need a few more things still, so.
Yeah. So we, as part of that, we're working on the climate action plan, trying to baseline our carbon, and there's we're really as far as we can go, but we've identified a whole lot more areas of information that we're going to need to have before we get close to completing that.
The one thing that, it was the square footage, that took me a while to get that. I think I have it in an email.
Oh.
And I have to look. There are some other pieces that I had obtained, but there are a lot of, I don't know. I mean, the information, I think is good information, but we just didn't have that information sitting in one place. So, that's, took so much time.
yesterday I learned the city's going through a recodification process. So if you will think about whatever you're doing through that lens, this would be a good time to suggest policy changes or policies.
Those are
That doesn't mean-
ordinances.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Sorry,
policies.
recodification. Yeah, sorry, ordinances, codes and ordinances, codes and ordinances.
So for instance, part of that
That's great.
recodification effort would be to, so in some of our ordinances, we have fees in the ordinances. So part of that is going to be removing the fee from the ordinance and making it a resolution. So the special offense is an example of that. So you have an ordinance and you have a separate fee. That's adopted by a resolution, among many other things that the law department's doing in terms of recodifying.
Which basically means like updating, reviewing everything and updating.
And also, I think also aligning it.
Aligning it.
Yes, so that, because, the ordinances refer to each other, so making sure that alignment.
Coordinated ordinance.
That's beautiful language. We have met as well, Seth and I, and met with folks at the school district, including Laura McCoy in attendance here, and the superintendent, and several other people to look at how we can share what we've done here for clean energy goals and how we can help move the school district along in that process as well. So eventually might be looking at that clean energy working group as incorporating members of the school district outside of myself, other people that are in the school district as well. So.
And pass a resolution.
And we're going to be, that's right, we're going to be putting some language to a resolution within a week or so, and then that'll be going to the school board in the first 2 Mondays of March. So they'll be doing a working session the first Monday of March, and then voting on the language the second Monday of March. Correct?
No, can't promise that, but that's the goal.
But if the timeline is what we hope it will be.
Yes, that's what we hope it will be.
Yeah. That'll be another school district in Wisconsin, hopefully, that has a goal.
Yeah, the third one and the strongest, probably, the way it's shaping up of any of the school districts. So. Kind of related to that too, this is more a project of my day job at Wisconsin Conservation Voters, but just recognizing that there's efforts happening at the city, and the school board, and other regional municipalities that are starting to at least identify what some first steps could be. We're going to be putting together a regional roundtable of local elected officials. So we've already spoke to the mayor and the county executive about it. We're going to be asking some other folks to participate. I think it'll be, we're still trying to find a date, but like the last week of March. So I'll have more information at the next meeting, but just kind of talking about how municipalities can share limited resources or strategies to propel some of these clean energy goals along. So It'll be one of 3 regional roundtables happening in Wisconsin. We're going to have a Milwaukee area one and a Chippewa Valley one too. So similar concept in those places as well. And there's going to be at that event, or maybe potentially sooner, I think I've been hyping it for nearly a year because it's been getting worked on for nearly a year, but a clean energy toolkit, which is specifically designed for local elected officials or folks that sit on boards like this, that it really breaks down different energy usages and how to begin that transition. So our friends at Renew Wisconsin did a lot of the technical heavy lifting on that, and that's got sent to the printers this week. We've been waiting for it for about a year, so that must mean it was really good and worth the wait. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all and potentially getting somebody to come present to this group on that specifically.
We have our next coffee talk coming up Monday. We've had one so far. It was not well attended. And so we all went out and did some more emailing and reach out and hoping for a bigger group on Monday of business leaders or people in the businesses who are into sustainability or the environmental section of the business or, that kind of area to get together and just talk about what they're doing and share ideas, and hopefully things will come out of that. So that's Monday if you guys...
Are the neighborhood associations aware of that and they can kind of help spread the word, or?
Not yet, no. They're not, but that would be, for the
Way to
businesses.
get more people there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we had a great conversation about waste management and, with one person who came. And in fact, Cody was talking about an app that people could use to have those big waste containers brought to your house to sort of at your own will. You could, it was a side business besides waste management has, a lot of that business, but this is a side business with an app where people could kind of bypass that if they needed to. And so there was a good conversation about the problems of waste and the challenges, and which is this one person. So hopefully the more we get, the better.
We already have 4 6 that have committed already to show up, so we won't be talking amongst ourselves. That's good.
Just been talking with Seth about getting a couple of speakers here. I won't go into it all, we'll let the speakers come and do it.
The next couple working group meetings are going to be next Wednesday, Clean Energy, 4:30 at Kavarna, and then Pollinator group is going to meet at the Attic on Wednesday, March 4th, 5:30.
There is a resolution that came out of the Water Quality Task Force with pretty good bipartisan support to ban PAHs in the state of Wisconsin. So they listened to that resolution that we passed along. I think right after it got approved, the bill came out. Coincidence? Maybe. But that's going to be up. There's a lot of moving parts with a lot of the water bills happening in the next few weeks here, but we should expect to see the water bills go before the state assembly next Tuesday, possibly, and then all the water bills as late as the 2nd or 3rd week of March. So
they're flowing along.
They are flowing very Yep.
There are a couple of pieces of legislation that have been introduced by legislators in our area dealing with PFAS as well that are moving forward at a pretty good clip. Those are interesting because the waste industry doesn't like some.
There are at least 4 PFAS bills. One of them is great. One of them, in my opinion, one of them is great. One of them is good, and 2 of them are bad. There's a really interesting bipartisan bill that came out from Dave Hansen and John Nygren. That's really, really solid in my opinion. And then the Clear Act is good as well. There's a couple others that.
The concern from the recycling industry is that it pulls from the environmental fund, which was set aside for recycling funding originally.
Mm-hmm.
Once it becomes a target, it helps pay for the grants to communities to do more recycling.
Yeah.
So, but I think PFAS is more acute of an issue than more recycling, so.
What's happening with water? Other updates? All right,
Move to adjourn.
there's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. We're adjourned. I'm going to take a vote.
Oh, you'd be.
You still have, I think it's Gordon's contact info from TC?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll get Kevin Kane here.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I had no idea
Yeah.
that housing
Um,
is a
Do you guys
bigger
have like an inventory of,
problem than.
Sites yet?
right?
We're working on that, I
Yeah,
think.
I would believe that.
We
I
don't
don't log
have
in.
a full inventory.
Cool.
You
Yeah,
have
it sounds cool. I
We're
know
working on that,
quite a
though.
few people.
Yeah, that's-